Well, welcome to the fourth video in this series, looking at the soundboard here at the church. And this video is taking it quite a bit further into that more advanced realm of using the soundboard. Now, I want to note from the very beginning, we're not going to talk about as much the philosophy of sound as much as the practical nitty-gritty of using this soundboard. And so that philosophy of sound realm, I think there's great YouTube videos out there that'll help you know why do I adjust certain things the way I do? Why do I use compressors and equalizers? Like how do I adjust those things? What is it doing and impacting the sound? The philosophy of that, we're going to talk about how do I use this soundboard. And so if you're interested in that, I can send you links to that. You can do a little YouTube search out there and find great videos for that. The church can help get you plugged into a training course for that online so you can learn more about that if you're really interested. But I'm going to show you the practical elements. And I should note again, you probably will not need this to run sound on a Sunday morning. The last three videos were more than enough to equip you to be able to run the sound. So if you're feeling overwhelmed already, just hit pause. That's okay. But let's dive in and go into the more advanced details of this particular soundboard. Now, one of the areas of the soundboard that I haven't talked about very much is this upper portion of the soundboard. Now, you know that this portion is on kind of the basic layout of this X32 input side of the soundboard. And what this upper portion is doing is adjusting the actual tools, the preamp, the gate, the equalizer, the bus ends, on an individual channel. And so what I'll do to adjust an individual channel is I'll select an input, just like you can select outputs and adjust things. I will select an input, and when I select an input, you'll notice that some of these visual cues, these LED markers up here, are moving and adjusting. And that's because there are individual adjustments that are happening on that channel to dial that channel in. Now, let's take, for example, one of the speaking microphones. And when I select that channel, if I want to look at what's happening up here and see it on the screen to get more details, what I can do is hit that view button, the view button. You see that view button? And when I click that view button, it will bring up some of the details of what's happening up here on the screen. And so you'll see a corresponding meter that's bouncing up and down right here. That's your overall preamp gain that's going into that particular channel. Now on that amplifier gain, I can turn up the overall gain on that channel, and you notice that this little dial, that 4.8, 5, 6, 7, that's the overall gain. You can see it being relayed on the little dial meter here as well. And as I turn up the gain, it is similar to turning up the overall volume on that channel, except it's adjusting the gain without adjusting this fader. So if I want to permanently adjust the volume on, say, this vocal mic right here without having to adjust the fader, I can always bring that fader back to 0 and know, oh, this is where it needs to be for that particular service. I can adjust the overall gain that's going into that channel with this fader right here. Now, another element that you'll notice that's happening up over on this particular quadrant of the soundboard is there's this 48V and this little slash through it. This can adjust the phase. I'll be honest, you will not need to use that. We have an electronic drum set. This is something that you would use if you've got two microphones that are miking a particular instrument, often on the drum, that are 180 out of phase. Otherwise, you can get this weird noise cancellation effect, right? This button, you will not use here at the church. But this button right here, this is that phantom power plus 48 volts. So that will send 48 volts of phantom power through that channel and onto that instrument on the stage. Now, this gets used very rarely now at the church because we have all wireless power systems, and they include a power battery in that system. But what sometimes happens, especially with guitars or stringed instruments, is they might have a pickup system on that instrument that doesn't use batteries. And if it doesn't use batteries, oftentimes, and even in some styles of microphones that don't use batteries, you have to give it that phantom power, and you would send 48 volts through there. Now it's not turning on because I have it disabled right now. We're playing the volume through the computer. But you would hit that 48 volt phantom power, it would light up, and then it would be sending that extra power to that particular instrument or whatnot to be able to power and energize that pickup that's being used on that instrument. Now after you've dialed in the overall gain, you've got up and down gain, and you've got it to the point where it's not clipping, it's not too high, right? It's not way up here where it's clipping off the top of the audio signal when it's playing, and it's not way down here where you can't hardly hear it at minus 42 decibels. When it's up there, kind of bouncing around 16 to 18, depending on that instrument. You can then go from there and go to the next segment of the soundboard. Now the next segment of the soundboard, found right here, you'd go down, and this is the part where you will find a compressor and a gate. Now the gate, to turn on and off these particular elements, you could click on and it would enable the gate as being highlighted. I can disable the gate. I can go over and I can turn off the compressor or turn on the compressor. And the gate in particular, that sometimes gets used with mics on drums, those sorts of things. And if you want to learn more about gate structures, where they're used, again, go to that philosophy. We will not really typically use that gate function on any of our instruments because we, again, have electronic drum systems here at the church. But we do use compressors, right? Compressors are quite handy. And basically what a compressor does is it takes the top portion of that signal. It goes up and down, it's very, very loud, and it smooshes that top portion down. It compresses it so that the overall volume doesn't go up and down quite as much. It doesn't, the high highs aren't as loud and the low moments, those quiet moments, aren't quite as low. You can smush the two together, which is good. Because if you get someone up on the stage who yells real loud all of a sudden, but then gets really quiet, right? Those dynamics, it's hard to follow when they're amplified. It can blast your eardrums because you dial it up so you can hear them in the quiet parts. And then when they get loud, woo, too loud, right? That compressor is your friend in those elements. It's also great for those who are singing, and on some songs they sing a little bit quieter, on other songs they're much louder. You can help mellow out some of those dynamics. Now sometimes you want dynamics. You don't want it so compressed that there are no up and down volumes, but we can adjust that compressor here. Here's the tool to do that right here. You can adjust some of the ratios on that compressor using these dials right here. So this is how you could adjust your compressor for that overall volume. Now what comes after the compressor is the equalizer here on the soundboard. And so if we want to see that equalizer, we can hit this view button here to visually see the equalizer. And you can even see on this graphic display where the different sound volumes are coming in on the frequency range for this particular vocal. And so you can visually adjust and see what's happening on some of the older soundboards that were pre-digital soundboards. Sometimes you had to do it by ear and only listen. And you want to be listening as well to what you're doing when you're adjusting the soundboard, but you have different styles of adjustment. You can adjust the different layouts, how it's shaping that particular dial. You can adjust where it's at. You have a low, they're labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, medium, high, and you can adjust that particular adjustment right there. So you've got gain, overall volume that you're adding or taking away, the gain on that particular spot. You have your frequency that you're locating that equalizer adjustment at, and then you have this Q level that is adjusting the width, the shape of that overall frequency adjustment. And again, you can change how those are structured, what kind of structure it's using for the equalizer adjustment for that high, medium, low, different levels. Now again, I'm not going to get into the philosophy of what sounds good for the equalizer in particular, but I will put up on the screen for you just a little quick cheat sheet. And this cheat sheet's sometimes helpful. This cheat sheet we have over at the church just to visually help get you started on what adjustments, how those different adjustments sound. But again, I would encourage, if you're not familiar with gain structures, compressors, equalizers, then don't mess with them. Or adjust them and get to know them in a practice session instead of on a Sunday morning, because it can create some weird wonky sounds that are very distracting from that worship time if you're trying to play and adjust with the equalizer and not familiar with what those adjustments are doing. Now this next segment, these bus sends area, this is an area that we would use on the soundboard. And in particular, the way that we would use this on a Sunday morning as we're building a worship set is most frequently to adjust the pan, the left and right positioning of that channel. And in the room, it makes not a ton of difference. In the room as you're listening, it's not going to be like, oh my goodness, I panned that speaker a little to the left, that handheld microphone a little to the left, and it changed the world, right? It won't do as much in the room, but on the live online live stream, it has a huge effect. Some of our worship teams are quite large. And when you have 6, 7, 8 speakers and singers up there on the stage going at one time, when you take all of those individual mono channels and you stack them all in the center of that listening experience, right, where they're all dead center, they all kind of get muddy, because all those vocals are coming at you on spot. You could think of it as 10 people talking at you all lined up in a row. But if you take those 10 people and you circle them all around you, more in a stereo pan, all like a full circle around you, and they're all talking, you can easily pick out each individual voice because of their location around you in that stereo pan. And so when we have the live stream recording, this is a tool that we use in our live stream. And to use this tool, basically you will adjust, you'll grab a channel, you will view your bus sends, and then over here on this dial you will see that it says pan, left, right. You can pan to the right plus 10, 12, or to the left minus 12. And basically what you're doing is moving this particular channel in that stereo space. That then if you were to put on your headphones, trusty headphones that we talked about in the last video, and listen to that live stream recording, you would hear those vocals moving from left to right. And you can do that across the stage. You don't want to be too overwhelming with it, where like someone's listening online and it sounds like someone's talking to them from the right side. Like that can be distracting as well. Oftentimes the main speakers, the main lead vocal will be dead center. This again, we're getting into that philosophy, and some of those harmonies and some of that balance, especially if you've got a few guitars, you might spread them out in that stereo pan left and right, so that overall you can pick out those individual instruments. It'll make it sound a little less muddy at the end of the mix on that live stream in particular. And a little bit more immersive, right? Which is kind of cool. Instead of just a mono channel coming at them like this, they get more of that stereo experience that they would be having in the room. Now, one of the other more advanced things that you'll notice we have on the soundboard for some of the worship teams, not all the teams is this helpful for, but for example, for our youth children's worship team, one of the things you'll notice on the outputs, if we were to go down to say bus 9 through 16, is we have this vocal left-right track right here. And if I select that and was to look at what's happening sends on fader, you'll notice that it is those vocal inputs that are being sent into this left and right stereo bus right here. And this is a stereo pair we can turn up and down. And this particular bus right here basically takes the inputs for those 3 different channels, it clumps and glues them all together, and then compresses all of them as one. And what that can do that's very helpful is you can take, if you have lots of singers and you have different singers in particular that sing lead vocal in some moments, and then harmony in others, right? You need some sort of way to make it so that their vocals will pop, will be nice and loud when they're singing by themselves. But then when all of them sing together, if they're all loud lead vocal style setups on the soundboard, it's just way too much vocals, right? And so on some of the different worship teams, you'll notice that we have bus 9 and 10 set up as this vocal. And what'll end up happening is it's an overall compressor taking all of those individual channels into this bus, and it is basically taking all those vocals, and when you stack them all together, and together they're way too loud, but individually they're just the right volume, it puts a compressor on the overall group of vocals and helps them glue and meld together a little bit better, so that there's not parts of the song where it's like, I can barely hear the vocals, and then other parts where it's like, whoa, too much vocals, everything else got blasted out. So this is a tool using that stereo bus, and you can actually take stereo buses, your outputs, for example, and you can adjust and make some adjustments on those buses using compressors. You can EQ your stereo vocals, and it will EQ all of the inputs together that are going into that combined bus. So another tool you have on the soundboard, a little bit more advanced. We learned kind of what you can do on individual channels using these tools, but these tools can also apply to your actual bus and your outputs as well. You can EQ the main mix on the whole room if you want to and put a compressor on. Kind of a cool tool that we have here on the soundboard. Now the final thing I want to point out to you on the soundboard, a tool that is at your disposal, is the effects rack built into the soundboard itself. And so we know that on this layer of the outputs, I've got these two channels for vocals. So I've got my lead vocals, my reverb, we talked about that in a previous video, and I could select and send on fader for that lead vocal mix, and I could send different volumes and different people. I could have more of that reverb being utilized on some channels than other channels. That's also how I could get rid of reverb, what I'm sending into the reverb. I could make it so that the green mic, which we often use for announcements and guest speakers, gets no reverb all the time because it's just muted. It's not being sent in there, and that way I don't have to adjust the reverb on it. I could add more reverb on Macy's mic and take a little bit away from Aspen's, or I could go overall, push a little bit more reverb into this bus that is utilizing that reverb's effect. Now the other thing you can do is adjust and dial in the actual settings on the effect, or what kind of effect the soundboard is using. And so to do that, I would use this little button right here called Effects, and that will pop up and show me the different effects that are available on the soundboard that I could select from. And in particular, if I want to adjust the effect that is on this channel, that bus 13, I could select bus 13 and it would highlight that this is effects rack number 1. This is the first effect. It was the first one that was shown on that upper portion of the screen in that last window. But I can go in and adjust some of the decay setting, like how long it takes for that vocal or that input to decay. I could adjust the delay that's happening on that channel, the density, the size. You can create some more detailed, nuanced changes to the effect, or I could just straight up go through and change the effect that's being used on this channel itself. Say I didn't want reverb, maybe I just wanted a de-esser or some other effects tool being used. I could change the overall effects that are being used there as well. So a cool another technique and tool that you have here on the soundboard. And again, not getting as much into the philosophy of what sounds good, what should I do. For some of those questions, hey, there are great resources out there. Come and talk with me. Hey, we can sit down on a Sunday morning or on a pre-recorded set like this, and we can go through and just say, hey, this is kind of what sounds good and why, and we can do a little question and answer session with that. Those are all available for you. If you want to learn more about the soundboard or some of the philosophy that we kind of referenced in passing in this video. Be sure to reach out to me, talk with me on a Sunday morning. We can sit down and do that as well. Hey, thank you so much for going through some of these last videos. If there's something I missed, I might make another 5th video to this. Just ask some of those questions and we can get into more question and answer style videos as well. But I think with that, you've got tools to get started on a Sunday morning. You've got tools that you could build an actual worship set now. You know, if you're familiar with how to use these tools, how it is that you could create one of those scenes for a worship team. And so with that, I think that you are ready and armed and dangerous to be running the soundboard here at the church. So thank you so much for being interested and watching these videos together.